"Get out of my bank! We don't serve people like you!" The words cracked through the marble lobby like a whip. Heads turned. Pens stopped mid-signature. Even the low hum of printers seemed to freeze. A woman in a black blazer stood rigid behind the counter, her jaw locked, her fingers stabbing the air toward a single figure in blue. That figure did not flinch. A young black woman in a simple sweater stood in silence, her gaze steady as if the insult hadn't just been hurled in front of half a dozen staff, 2 uniformed officers, and a scattering of stunned clients. She breathed once, slow and deliberate, as if testing how heavy the room could get before it collapsed. "Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below, and if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here. Now, back to her." The bank manager's voice sharpened, cutting the silence. "You heard me. Leave, right now." One officer shifted his stance, hand hovering near his belt. A receptionist whispered, eyes flicking from the black woman to the growing crowd. "She doesn't belong here." Belong. That word slithered through the lobby like smoke. It wasn't about paperwork. It wasn't about policy. It was about appearance, about assumption. The woman in blue didn't argue. She didn't protest. She simply stood as if anchored to the polished floor. Her silence screamed louder than their threats. She knew this scene. She had lived it before, different cities, different uniforms, always the same suspicion. At 16, escorted out of a hotel lobby in Charlotte. At 25, denied a loan despite collateral triple the requirement. And now, here, once again, asked to prove her worth in a place she had already paid for 100 times over. The crowd shifted. One man pulled out his phone, the red recording light blinking like a warning flare. A younger employee bit her lip, torn between loyalty to her manager and the unease curdling in her chest. The manager slammed the desk with her palm. "Do I need to call security again? You're trespassing." The word landed like a verdict. Trespassing in a bank she had come to for a lawful transaction. Trespassing in a space that took her taxes, her investments, her presence, and still spat her out. The black woman finally spoke. Her voice was calm, low, and steady, the kind that made people lean in rather than step back. "Run my name," the manager scoffed. "You're not verified, and until you are, you're nothing but a problem." But the way the woman stood, the measured stillness, the refusal to cower sent a different message. It wasn't submission, it was patience. A patience that promised this story wasn't ending at the front desk. It was just beginning. The marble floor gleamed beneath her shoes, but nothing about her outfit sparkled. No designer handbag, no gold watch, no entourage trailing behind. Just a navy blue sweater, pressed jeans, and a slim tablet case tucked under one arm. To most in the room, she looked like any other walk-in client. That was exactly the point. Her name was Jordan Ellis, 42 years old, founder of a billion-dollar investment group, silent majority shareholder of this very bank. But today, she wasn't here as a CEO. She was here as a customer, no shield of title, no flash of wealth, just a woman stepping into a branch to move her own money. The morning had started quietly. She intended to complete a simple withdrawal. Large, yes, but routine for someone in her position. $5 million wired out to fund a housing project her foundation had been building for months. She could have sent an assistant. She could have signed documents from her glass office 40 floors above the city. Instead, she chose this. A walk into the lobby, alone, invisible. She had reasons. Jordan had learned long ago that power reveals itself most sharply when you strip it bare. At 23, she watched a teller freeze her first commission check because it looked suspicious. At 30, she was asked if she could provide proof of employment while trying to open an account for her second company. 2 decades later, she no longer walked into banks hoping for fair treatment. She walked in expecting the opposite. And so she tested them. No tailored suit, no chauffeured car, no introduction from her board, just her presence. If the system was rotten, it would show itself quickly. It didn't take long. The manager's sneer, the whispers from staff, the hand hovering near a police belt, she had seen this script before. What they didn't know was that the woman standing quietly at the center of their suspicion didn't just have an account with Summit First Bank. She had signed the documents that gave it life after acquisition. For now, though, she let the silence play. "Check her ID again." The words came from a clerk in a gray vest, her voice sharp enough to slice through the hush. She leaned across the counter, lips curled as if Jordan's driver's license was a counterfeit prop in some low-budget scam. Another clerk muttered just loud enough, "People like her don't come in with numbers like that." The phrase landed heavy. People like her. 3 words that carried centuries, dressed up as procedure. Jordan didn't move. Her tablet case rested against her hip, her fingers still. The silence wasn't surrender. It was strategy. The gray vest clerk rolled her eyes, pressing a button beneath the counter. A faint chime echoed. Within seconds, the security desk lit up, and 2 uniformed officers began making their way over. Their footsteps on the marble floor felt louder than they should have, like a drum roll for a scene Jordan had already predicted. "She's stalling," the manager said, loud enough for the clients waiting nearby to hear. "Fraudulent accounts usually do this. Delay, distract, pretend." And a man in a navy suit near the coffee station chuckled under his breath. "Should have known," he whispered to his companion. The companion didn't answer, but his raised eyebrow said enough. Jordan let her eyes sweep the room once. She noted every expression: suspicion, curiosity, discomfort. The junior teller in the corner shifting uneasily. The college kid pulling out his phone, red light blinking. The officer adjusting his belt as though already convinced she'd be escorted out. The manager's voice climbed higher, fueled by the murmurs. "You're wasting real clients' time. If you don't leave, we'll have you removed." One of the officers reached for his radio. The clerk smirked, like the verdict was already signed. Jordan inhaled slowly, grounding herself. Her past had taught her one truth. When the room builds a wall of doubt, the first brick always sounds the same denial. And now, here it was, heavy as stone. Still, she stood. Still, she waited. Because this was the part of the storm she never interrupted. The officer's radio hissed, breaking the air like static electricity. The sound was faint, but in a lobby that had gone dead silent, it might as well have been thunder. The bank manager's hand hovered over the landline phone, her painted fingernail tapping against the plastic receiver like a metronome counting down to an execution. All eyes were locked on one woman, Jordan Ellis, standing in a plain sweater, simple jeans, no designer badge of wealth to shield her. The room waited for her to explain herself, to defend, to plead. They expected excuses. They expected weakness, but Jordan didn't oblige. Instead, she placed her slim tablet case on the counter. The sound of leather meeting wood was soft, but in that tense moment, it landed like a verdict. Conversations stuttered into silence. A man near the espresso machine looked up mid-sip, his coffee trembling in its paper cup. Even the officer who had been inching closer paused, his boots squeaking faintly against the marble floor. The gray vest clerk smirked, filling the silence. "See? No words. That's what guilt looks like." Her manager picked up the cue. "I told you already, leave this branch immediately. People like you don't belong in a private client lounge." Her voice wasn't just loud. It was performative, pitched for the gallery of customers now whispering in rows of leather chairs. Jordan's lips parted. Not wide, not rushed. Just enough to let 3 words slip free. Quiet but sharp. "Run my name." The cadence carried across the lobby. Calm, level, but with an edge that forced even the clerk to pause. Heads turned. Someone whispered, "What did she just say?" The manager blinked, caught off guard. She had expected denial, excuses, maybe even an angry outburst she could use against her. Not this. She recovered quickly, her tone dripping acid. "You don't give orders here. You're not verified. Until then, you're nothing but a problem." Jordan tilted her head slightly, almost curious. She didn't argue back. She didn't justify herself. The silence itself became her argument. In the far corner, a college kid pressed record on his phone, the red light blinking like a flare. A middle-aged man in a navy suit muttered to his companion, "This is going to end ugly." His companion just raised an eyebrow, watching. Jordan had seen this scene before. At 22, her first real commission check was frozen by a teller who didn't trust the numbers. At 30, a banker had asked her to prove her employment while she stood with incorporation papers in her hand. Every time, the silence had felt like suffocation. But not now. Not today. Today, her silence wasn't suffocation. It was strategy. The manager grew restless. She could feel the room slipping from her control, though she masked it with volume. "She's stalling. Fraud always stalls. It's their playbook." The officer touched his radio, eyes waiting for permission. The gray vest clerk leaned forward, emboldened. You heard the manager. Step away from the desk before you make this worse. Jordan inhaled once. Steady, slow. Her chest rose, fell. Then she spoke again, softer than before, but weighted like stone. You confuse quiet with weakness. That's your last mistake. The words sliced the air cleaner than any shout could have. The manager's jaw clenched, her fingers frozen mid-gesture. A ripple of discomfort moved through the room. The client with the coffee set his cup down, eyes narrowing. Even the officer stopped fidgeting with his belt. The silence that followed wasn't passive anymore. It was charged, alive, thick enough to taste. The junior teller in the corner bit his lip, his hands twitching near his terminal as if torn between obedience and conscience. He looked at Jordan, then back at his manager, and finally dropped his gaze to the floor, ashamed. Jordan didn't move. She didn't smile, didn't blink away the tension. She simply stood unwavering, immovable. In that stillness, power shifted. Not loudly, not with spectacle, but with the kind of gravity that forces people to confront what they don't want to see. The storm was no longer approaching. It was here, and Jordan Ellis was its eye. The manager's patience cracked. Her voice sharpened, each word launched like a stone. This is fraud, clear and simple. We've seen the type before, fake cards, fake names, big numbers that never check out. You're no different. The declaration rang out across the lobby, aimed less at Jordan and more at the audience forming around her. Dozens of eyes now lingered, clients who'd come to deposit checks, retirees waiting for appointments, a mother with her child in tow. Some leaned forward in curiosity, others recoiled in discomfort, but none of them looked away. Jordan didn't respond. Not yet. The gray vest clerk, emboldened by her boss's fury, added her own poison. If she were really a client, we'd know her. Real clients don't show up dressed like that. Her smirk grew cruel, her eyes sweeping Jordan up and down. She probably pulled that card from someone else's wallet. Gasps rippled through the waiting area. The mother shook her head, muttering, "You can't just say that." But the manager ignored her. One of the officers stepped closer, his radio pressed to his shoulder. "Do you want her removed?" he asked quietly. "Removed?" the manager repeated, then raised her voice. "Escorted. Out. Immediately." The word echoed like a gavel. Jordan's stillness never broke. She remembered Atlanta, 10 years back. Another bank lobby, another desk, another accusation. The man behind that counter had smirked as he told her their systems had flagged irregular activity. He hadn't known the irregularity was the color of her skin. She'd walked out that day humiliated, burning with resolve. She swore never again to stand powerless in a place she rightfully belonged. And here it was again. Sama tone, sama venom, sama presumption. The junior teller in the corner finally spoke, his voice cracking. "Manager, I saw her name this morning. The system showed—" "Enough," the manager snapped like a whip. "One more word and you'll join her outside." The clerk in gray leaned in, her smile gleaming like a blade. "Security. She's refusing to leave. You know what that means." But Jordan didn't flinch. Her eyes lifted slowly, meeting the officer's gaze. Calm, steady, almost pitying. The officer hesitated, his hand dropping slightly from his belt. Something in her silence unsettled him, something that didn't match the picture being painted by the staff. Still, the accusations rained down. "She's a fraud. She doesn't belong here. She's wasting everyone's time." Each statement stacked like bricks, building a wall meant to box her out. But Jordan stood anchored, letting them dig deeper, letting the audience absorb every word. Because she knew what they didn't. The higher the wall, the harder it falls. And when it did, everyone watching would remember exactly who had built it. The words weren't enough anymore. The insults had sharpened, the accusations piled high. Now, the branch manager needed spectacle. She lunged forward, snatching the black card from the counter where it lay beside Jordan's ID. She held it up between two fingers as if it were evidence in a trial. "This," she announced to the lobby, her voice carrying across the tiled hall, "isn't real. It's stolen property, and it will not be returned until the bank verifies it." A wave of gasps rippled through the crowd. The young mother pressed her child closer. The man in the navy suit whispered, "That's theft," under his breath. But the manager, drunk on her own sense of power, didn't hear or didn't care. "Kevin," she barked at the gray vest clerk. "Lock it away." The clerk grinned, taking the card like a trophy. He strode to a brushed steel safe behind the desk, punched in a code with exaggerated precision, and dropped the card inside. The heavy door slammed shut with a finality that echoed like iron bars on a cell. Company property now, he smirked, dusting his hands as if he'd just finished something heroic. Phones went up across the room. The red lights multiplied, recording, streaming, documenting. The moment was no longer contained within the marble walls. It was spilling into feeds, timelines, headlines waiting to be written. Jordan remained still, her expression unreadable. To the untrained eye, it looked like defeat. But those who watched closely saw something else, a composure that bordered on unnerving, a patience that felt dangerous. The manager leaned forward, face flushed with triumph. "Do you hear me? You are done here. Your so-called account is canceled. You've wasted enough of this bank's time." The junior teller shook his head, voice rising despite himself. "That's not true. Her name is in the system," VIP flagged. "Silence," the manager snapped, pointing at him with the same finger she'd used to banish Jordan. "One more word and you're out of a job." The officer, caught between duty and doubt, finally spoke. "Ma'am," he said carefully, "confiscating her card isn't protocol. We should—" But the clerk cut him off, louder, performative. "She's a fraud. Anyone can print plastic and call it credit." The word fraud cracked against the walls, louder than the radio static, louder than the whispers of the crowd. Fraud. The accusation that had chased Jordan her entire life. At 16, she'd been accused of loitering in a hotel lobby. At 25, accused of falsifying her own income statements. At 30, accused of fronting for a man because women didn't start companies that size. Every accusation meant to shrink her, erase her, dismiss her. And now, accused again, in her own bank, by people who thought they had the authority to define her. The manager slammed the desk once more. "Officer, remove her now. She's trespassing. She's impersonating a client. She's wasting every honest person's time." The officer hesitated, but the command hung heavy in the air. Guests muttered angrily. Phones lifted higher. The atmosphere swelled like a courtroom mid-verdict. Half the jury convinced of guilt, the other half already disgusted by the spectacle. Through it all, Jordan did not blink, did not move. Because she knew. The line had just been crossed. They had stolen her property. They had labeled her a criminal. They had given her everything she needed. The breaking point wasn't hers, it was theirs. Jordan didn't snatch back her card. She didn't raise her voice. She simply reached for her phone, the movement slow, deliberate, like a judge lifting a gavel. The crowd's murmur dimmed as curiosity overtook the tension. She pressed one contact. The line clicked almost instantly. "Nia," she said evenly, her tone low but cutting through the chaos. "Activate protocol." The voice on the other end was crisp, professional, waiting. "Confirm. Do you want logging engaged?" "Everything," Jordan replied. "Video, audio, timestamps. Begin the audit." "Yes, ma'am. Systems live in 3, 2, 1. The call ended. No one else in the room knew what had just been set in motion, but the shift was subtle, electric. Somewhere, servers whirred. Somewhere, compliance officers saw red alerts flashing across their dashboard. The manager mistook Jordan's calm for surrender. She smirked, dusting her hands. "Still standing there? Fine. Let the police handle you. You're finished." Jordan's gaze lifted. "Steady. You've documented that theft yourself," she said quietly, nodding toward the safe. "Every word, every action recorded." The clerk laughed, waving her off. "Please, who's going to believe you?" But the phones raised across the lobby told a different story. Customers were recording, streaming. A ripple of unease spread through the staff as they realized this wasn't happening in secret anymore. The junior teller's eyes widened. He mouthed silently toward Jordan. "I know who you are." Jordan gave nothing away. She simply folded her arms, her silence now more commanding than the shouts of her accusers. The officer's radio hissed again, but he didn't move. Something in her voice measured, certain made hesitation bloom. Jordan glanced once at the crowd, then back at the manager. "This isn't the first time you've profiled a client, but it will be the last." Her phone buzzed in her palm. A text from Nia, "Audit live, legal notified, all feeds secure." Jordan's lips curved, not quite a smile, but enough to chill the manager's bravado. The counterattack had begun. Quiet, precise, irreversible. The lobby buzzed with nervous energy, whispers colliding with the faint hum of the air vents. Phones stayed lifted. The manager crossed her arms, convinced victory was hers, blind to the tide shifting beneath her feet. Jordan Ellis finally stepped forward. Not rushed, not timid, just one measured step that made the crowd instinctively quiet. "You've called me a fraud," she said, her voice even. "You've accused me of theft. You've locked away what belongs to me. Do you know who I am?" The manager sneered. Another scam artist caught in the act. Jordan tilted her head, her eyes steady, her tone sharp enough to cut. I am the CEO of Ellis Capital, the firm that owns controlling shares of this bank. This branch, this safe, every square foot you're standing on falls under my authority." Silence. Then a gasp, sharp and collective, as if the room itself had inhaled. The clerk's smirk vanished. His hand slipped off the safe like it had burned him. The officer froze mid-step, blinking as if replaying her words in his head. From the back, the junior teller found his voice. "She's telling the truth. I saw her name in the system this morning, executive-level clearance, owner override." The mother in the corner clutched her child tighter, whispering, "Oh my God." The man in the Navy suit muttered, "Wait, she owns the place." The phone's recording caught everything. The stunned faces, the dawning horror, the sudden collapse of certainty. The manager tried to recover, but her words faltered. "Thursday, that's impossible. You're lying." Jordan's gaze didn't waver. She raised her phone, showing the live audit feed now mirrored on her screen. Her name, her title, her authority displayed in bold letters across the bank's secure system. "I don't need to shout," she said quietly. "The system speaks for me, and now, so do your own actions." The ripple turned to a wave. Clients exchanged looks, their whispers no longer sympathetic to the staff. The officer took a deliberate step back, lowering his hand from his belt. The junior teller stood taller, his voice clear this time. "She is our CEO." Gasps turned into murmurs, murmurs into applause. A few claps at first, then more, until the sound filled the lobby, each strike echoing against marble and glass. The manager's face drained of color. Her hand trembled where it gripped the desk. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Jordan let the applause settle, then delivered the line that would echo far beyond the lobby's walls. "You called me a fraud. In a bank I own." The words landed like thunder, impossible to ignore, unforgettable to deny. And in that instant, the entire branch knew the story had turned. For a heartbeat, no one moved. The revelation hung in the air like smoke, clinging to every breath. Then the room cracked. The gray-vest clerk stumbled back from the safe. His smirk dissolved into a grimace. She can't be serious." His voice wavered, but the panic in his eyes betrayed him. The manager's face had gone pale, her lips parting and closing like a fish gasping for air. No, this isn't possible. If you were really..." She stopped mid-sentence, staring at Jordan's phone, the executive dashboard gleaming across the screen. Proof undeniable. The officer, who moments earlier had been ready to escort Jordan out, lowered his radio. He glanced at the crowd, then at Jordan. "Ma'am," he said quietly, almost apologetically. "Do you want us to stand down?" Jordan didn't answer. She didn't need to. Her silence alone was command enough. In the back, the junior teller stood taller than he had all day. His voice, shaky but clear, broke the tension. "I told you, her reservation in the system wasn't just VIP, it was owner-level clearance." He looked at the manager, anger flushing his young face. "And you ignored it." The lobby erupted. Some clients applauded outright. Others muttered indignantly, pointing phones toward the staff who only moments ago had jeered. One man near the coffee machine said loudly enough for everyone to hear, "I've banked here for 15 years. Never again. This is disgusting." The mother with the child raised her phone high, recording the staff's stunned expressions. "People deserve to see this," she whispered. The clerk tried to salvage something, anything. We were just following policy," he stammered. "Policy?" a customer snapped back. "Since when does policy mean stealing a client's card?" The crowd murmured agreement. The applause grew louder, rippling across the marble like waves. The manager shook her head, her voice cracking under the weight. You don't understand. We were protecting the bank." Jordan finally spoke, her voice low, deliberate, and cutting. "You weren't protecting the bank. You were protecting your prejudice. Every syllable landed like a hammer. The staff shrank under the weight of the words. The officer straightened, jaw tight, as if silently agreeing. The junior teller exhaled, relief washing across his face as truth finally pierced the smog of lies. The shift was complete. Moments ago, Jordan had stood alone, accused and cornered. Now the tide of the room had turned. Clients stood with her. Witnesses recorded her. Authority bent toward her. The staff? They had nothing left but fear. The applause swelled, then faded into an expectant hush. Every eye in the lobby locked on Jordan Ellis. She had said little, but her silence had already judged the room. Now, it was time for the verdict. Jordan lifted her phone again, her thumb moving with precision. The screen glowed, lines of secure code and access menus unfolding like the pages of a sealed book. She spoke into the receiver with the same calm that had unnerved them since the first insult. Nia, initiate termination. Her assistant's voice was steady, professional, amplified faintly by the speaker so the words carried beyond Jordan's ear. Confirmed. Which employees? Jordan's eyes swept the counter. The manager, face drained of color. The clerk in gray, sweating beside the safe. Another teller who had stood silent through it all, complicit by inaction. All of them. A beat of silence. Then Nia's voice, processing now. Oh. Almost instantly, the terminal screens behind the counter flickered. The safe keypad flashed red. The staff's access badges, clipped neatly to their jackets, buzzed and lit with a blinking X. A collective gasp rose from the clients as the system erased them in real time. The gray vest clerk yanked at his badge as though it had betrayed him. Wait, what's happening? His voice cracked, panic rising. The junior teller's screen remained untouched, glowing steady. He looked down, then back at Jordan with wide eyes. She had spared him. The manager staggered back, shaking her head. You can't do this. I've worked here 20 years. Jordan's voice cut through her plea, calm and final. You worked here 20 years, and in 20 seconds you destroyed every shred of trust this branch ever held. That is your legacy. The words dropped like a stone into deep water. Final. Irrevocable. Around them, customers erupted again, some cheering, some clapping, others murmuring justice under their breath. The officer nodded once, as if acknowledging authority he hadn't recognized before. The mother whispered into her phone camera. She fired them. Right here, right now. The manager lunged toward the terminal, jabbing keys that no longer obeyed her. This is illegal. You can't just... But the system had already spoken. Every login denied. Every credential revoked. Jordan lowered her phone, her expression unmoved. Illegal, she repeated softly. Number, what you did was illegal. What I did was inevitable. The crowd roared in agreement. Phones captured every second. The judgment was complete. The terminals had gone dark. The badges blinked red. The staff stood hollow, stripped of authority, their power dissolved in the very lobby they once ruled. But Jordan Ellis hadn't moved. She stood at the center, calm as the marble pillars around her. The applause faded into silence, waiting. Phones hovered, recording not just for proof now, but for history. Jordan's gaze swept the room. What happened here, she said, voice low but resonant. Wasn't about policy. It wasn't about protocol. It was prejudice, wrapped in paperwork. Her eyes flicked to the manager, who trembled beside the useless terminal. You thought my silence was surrender. You mistook restraint for weakness. That was your last mistake. Ugh. The words echoed, sharp and unforgettable. She turned slightly, addressing the clients, the mother holding her child, the man in the Navy suit, the college kid still live streaming. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. Because dignity doesn't shout. It stands. And when it stands long enough, justice follows. The applause rose again, louder this time, deliberate and heavy like a verdict delivered by a jury. The officer stepped aside, almost formally, as if opening a path for her. Jordan collected her tablet case from the desk, her movements unhurried. She looked at the safe, where her card still sat locked away, and then back to the clerk who had mocked her. Open it, she commanded. His hands shook as he obeyed, fumbling the code. The door clicked, swinging open. The black card lay inside, gleaming under fluorescent light. He handed it back with trembling fingers. Jordan took it calmly, slipping it into her case without a glance. To her, it was never about the card. It was about what had been revealed in trying to take it. She faced the crowd one last time. "Remember this," she said, her voice carrying beyond the marble walls. "Power isn't what you shout at someone. Power is what you cannot take from them. Not with insults, not with theft, not with fear." The lobby fell silent, absorbing the words like scripture. And with that, Jordan Ellis turned and walked toward the glass doors. No escort, no rush, just a woman reclaiming what was always hers. As she pushed the doors open, the late afternoon lights spilled in, drenching the lobby in gold. Behind her, the applause swelled one final time, rolling after her like a tide. She didn't look back. She didn't need to. Justice had already spoken.